Hi, I'm Dr. George Yancey. Let's share some paradigms. And the paradigm I want to share today is a paradigm about the problem of identity politics. What are the problems of identity politics? Because as you've seen, if you saw my video explaining what it is, I clearly come across that I have problems with identity politics. But I didn't really go into that because I don't want to put too much into a single video. So I wanted to save this video to look at those problems. Before I look at those problems, why do people use identity politics? Because when I look at the problems, you're going to say, well, why are we doing this? Well, I believe we use identity politics because it can win. When you're talking about oppressed groups, people who are oppressed, and then you are agitating for them, that is a winning message. That's something none of us want to think that we're oppressing others. So it's a very winning message. I think it helped Trump to win in 2016. I think in some ways it helped Obama, even though he sort of pushed away from it. But I think it still helped him, the first black president. I think it helped people to win. So there's that temptation. Having said that, is it something we should be using? Well, let me point out some of the aspects about identity politics. I'm currently working on a book on identity politics. And as I've done that, as I've looked at the writings of people who advocate identity politics on the left and the right, and their reaction on social media, I've come to some conclusions. One of the conclusions is that identity politics leads you to demonizing your opponents. Everything's divided into oppress and oppressor. Well, what is an oppressor? An oppressor is an evil person, right? I mean, can you think of any really great, good oppressors we have in our history, in our society? I cannot. An oppressor is an evil person. And once we label someone as oppressor, then we can demonize them. Their defeat is necessary. And whatever we can do to assure their defeat is justified. And that leads to the second problem of identity politics. It leads to a win at all costs mentality. No matter what we need to do, we win. There's been some research on religious terrorists, and it shows that they have the same mentality. Now, I'm not saying that people with identity politics engage in terrorism, although some identity politics has led to violence, we must admit. But I am saying that that mentality is very dangerous. If I have to win at all costs, then why not lying? Why not cheating? Why not doing things that are unethical or even dangerous? It's a very dangerous mentality that's win at all costs. One of the things that happens with identity politics, by the way, is that you're quick to turn people that normally may be on your team into heretics. Because if they don't agree with you 100% of the time, they're a heretic. What's at stake here is oppression of groups defined as minorities. We cannot have anyone who's not carrying their full weight, who's not carrying the full argument. They must be heretics, and in some ways, they're more dangerous than the outsiders. Identity politics creates polarization in our society. If we want society with community, it polarizes us. And that is very dangerous. Now, I want to point out another problem with identity politics, and this is one that you probably wouldn't see, but it's one that I actually have a paper on, and I'll post the link to the paper in my description. But identity politics actually is bad for your health. What we're finding out, and by the way, there's another paper that had the same finding, that people who accept identity politics have lower levels of well-being. An interesting thing, if you go to my video where I discuss identity politics and what it is, I pointed out around 2012, there's this attention to issues of prejudice in academia and the media. Also, around 2012, there's some research that shows that young women, their well-being began, especially progressives, because remember, 2012, identity politics was much more on the left than the right, that young women on the left began to see a drastic decline in their well-being. And it was happening with progressive men as well, but not as much. And then, later on in that decade, we saw a decline in well-being to people on the right. as they too went into identity politics. Now, we know that it's correlated with lower levels of well-being in general, and then we look at this longitudinal evidence. It's not unrealistic to say that identity politics is bad for the health of people in our society. And the more we engage in identity politics, the less healthy we're going to be. So, identity politics creates this polarization, it's bad for our health, it leads us to demonizing others. So when I talk about this constellation of identity politics on the left, all these groups, identity politics on the right, all these groups here, and they fight each other, this is not a situation we want to be in our country. And then one final problem. Identity politics finds solutions for problems of particular people, but not for people in general. When you look at the identity politics of anti-racism, a topic that I'm familiar with, you see their solutions are centered totally around people of color. So much so that it's not uncommon for whites to go to an anti-racism training and feel that they can't say anything. And thus the solution to people of color being silenced for centuries is to silence whites, instead of bringing people together to find solutions, bring people together to have communication. My solution for the problems of race is different from the anti-racist in that I want to bring people in, whereas they want to exclude others. And this happens with identity politics on the right as well. So, identity politics is very problematic. It's not healthy for us. And it's something we need to move away from, in my opinion, if we're going to be a healthy society. There are groups that face marginalization, some degrees of oppression. I'm not denying that. But we need to find solutions that include everyone and not just focus on those groups. And remember, as a Christian, human depravity does not stop because you're oppressed. And oppressed groups can turn into oppressors. Does this share some paradigms? Paradigms of the value of identity politics, and perhaps you've seen a new light that this is problematic? If it does, I hope you think more about identity politics, how we use it, and how you may be engaging in your life. If you've come this far and you like what you're hearing, please support me by giving me a like or a subscribe. Give me a comment. Tell others about me. I hope if you like this, if you don't like me, give me a comment. That's fine. Let's have a good discussion. And if you do all these things, I sure would appreciate it. And please, as well, come back. We can shatter some more paradigms.